You're listening to the Lanterns Radio Network. We are the network dedicated to empowering the individual, illuminating the truth, defending American exceptionalism, and inspiring future generations. Stay connected and get involved at
Unauthorized access attempt detected. Tracking user via darknet algorithm. Isolating IP address. Targeting response teams.
Greetings, operative. Your KLRN override has been approved. Please stand by.
Lanterns authorization code accepted. Logging in. Your access to the HoloNet has been approved. Please stand by.
Incoming transmission.
To the HoloNet podcast on the Lanterns Media Network. The new conservative resistance begins right here, right now.
Allied reinforcements have arrived from the west.
You're listening to the HoloNet on Lanterns Media Network. The millennial conservative resistance begins here.
Oh, yes, indeed, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, children of all ages, the new millennial conservative resistance does indeed begin right here, right now, with you. You are listening to the HoloNet podcast on the Lanterns Media Network and syndicated on KLRN Radio. Again, that is KLRN Radio, if you want to check them out as well. Coming to you today is February the 17th, the year of our Lord 2019. And there's a lot to go through this week. There's a lot to unpack. I mean, I'm going to start kind of top of the show with a little bit of housekeeping. Actually, no, I'll get to that later on in the show. Let's dive right into it. Joe Biden has disparaged America as an embarrassment while speaking in Europe. Gonna go to picture-in-picture for that real fast. Where's my picture-in-picture? There it is. All right. Joe Biden disparaging America as an embarrassment while speaking in Europe. First, before we even jump into this story coming to us from the Blaze, I think America disparages Joe Biden as an embarrassment. Creepy Uncle Joe, hands on the shoulders. Yeah, no. Let me see if I can pull that up. Creepy Joe Biden. Creepy Joe Biden. Because the memes are strong. The memes are very strong here. And Creepy Joe Biden, right there. Creepy Joe Biden. In all of his glorious creepiness. Oh, that's YouTube. Yeah, no, we don't want to do YouTube. That can get real ugly real quick. Yeah, some examples of Creepy Joe Biden. Leaning in way too close. Creepy Joe Biden. Now, this is just a generic Google search. I make no guarantees or warranties of how accurate those photos are or how realistic they are, but yeah, Creepy Joe Biden. So, former Vice President Joe Biden, who is reportedly mulling a run at the White House, described the United States as an embarrassment while speaking in Germany on Saturday. The exact quote was, "The America I see values basic human decency, not snatching children from their parents or turning our back on refugees at our border. Americans know that's not right," Biden said, the Examiner reported. "The American people understand plainly that this makes us an embarrassment. The American people know overwhelmingly that it's not right. that it's not who we are. Although Biden did not criticize Trump by name, maintaining a long-standing unspoken policy of refraining from criticizing the sitting president while on foreign soil, Biden spoke as a citizen and said that America lacks leadership. Woo! He's playing that one close, because saying that America lacks leadership comes right up to that line of insulting a sitting president on foreign soil, doesn't it? But again, I reiterate, I think that Creepy Joe is much more of an embarrassment to the American people than the American people should be to Creepy Joe. Ugh. Please run for office. Please run for president. That will be one of the most entertaining possible 2020 campaigns ever. Joe will get wrecked. Joe will get wrecked. Mark my words. You heard it here first. So that brings us to a couple of other quick things here on the HoloNet podcast that we really do address. And you know, I want to address the elephant in the room. Anybody who's been watching or listening to the Lanterns Media Network over the course of the last few months may have noticed there have been a lot of movements of different shows from Lanterns over to Mojo 50, or shows that have gone on hiatus and you know, some of them haven't come back. But I do want to inform you today that the HoloNet will be transitioning off of the Lanterns platform. I want to be very frank about that. This is not a case of there being any bad blood between me and the owners of Lanterns Media Network. This isn't a case where, you know, I'm being driven out or where I'm leaving under bad terms. Everything is amiable. We just have to grip the reality that right now Lanterns is going to be standing down from putting out podcasts. The HoloNet to date is the last podcast remaining on the platform, so I don't know what the future of that platform is going to look like. I can't speak to it. I would refer your questions directly to Lanterns Media Network, see if they can help you out. But the HoloNet is going to be moving on. Now, one way or another, we're either going to be moving on as an independent entity, or we will be joining the team at KLRN in full. I've been in discussion with the KLRN team. They've been very amenable and have invited us to join them with open arms. I am also still in discussions with a couple of other groups as well, so we'll see what happens there. And we may just make a go of it as an independent entity as we started. I started the HoloNet back when it was the Matt Holloway show with the notion of going it on my own, of starting up a YouTube channel, starting up kind of a Facebook following. That's how it all began, and then we were fortunate enough to meet up with the people from Lanterns. We were introduced by Freedom's disciple, Jonathan Dunn of The Blaze, and he was good enough to get me involved with those people, and it's been a great run. So I want to thank the people, my fellow Lanterneers over at the Lanterns Media Network. I want to thank Chris Pillier, who is by and large the owner and operator of Lanterns Media Network. Watson Prunier, you can currently listen to Watson Prunier on Mojo 50 at the Battle for Freedom. I want to thank Dylan Lyles and Stephen Airy of the Defenders of American Exceptionalism. I know Dylan's on hiatus right now, but Stephen's still carrying on, and I hope to continue to do more guest spots with Stephen over there on Mojo 50 with the Mojo 50 Jackholes. And also the BJP. Blake is over at Mojo 50 now. I don't know that he started his show, but I believe he's going to be debuting over there soon. So a lot going on right now, and we're seeing a lot of consolidation and a lot of migration in the conservative radio space. We've recently seen the very controversial merger of The Blaze and CRTV, resulting in Blaze Media, which now has Glenn Beck, Louderworth Crowder, Steven Crowder, Steve Deese, quite a few big names in conservative talk. So we're seeing a big move. We're seeing a couple of large formations come together, and I think you could honestly say the Blaze Media and Mojo 50 in the same breath, given the caliber there. And I think given the caliber of the team that's rising at KLRN, you can group them with that subset as well. Say it in the same breath. You know, the Blaze Media, Mojo 50, and KLRN. So I would be very proud and have great distinction to join that group of people. But we're going to see what happens, and I will keep you posted. You've come with me this far on this ride here at the HoloNet, and I'm very, very grateful for it. I'm very, very grateful for your patronage, for your listenership, because I know you have a lot of places that you can go to hear about these kind of stories and to have these kind of discussions, because that's, in the end, what this is. Now, discussion may be a titch one-sided, I'm not going to lie, at least, when you listen to it. But the conversation and the response comes in with your comments on the posts, with your tweets, and with your Facebook comments, and we're trying to expand into MeWe now as well, kind of following the mold that Mojo put out there, and it's kind of crazy that all of this happened so quickly. I didn't want to I didn't want to make an announcement of it, right on the heels of Mojo 5-0 losing the legendary, the inimitable Doc Thompson, which was a huge blow to conservative talk as a whole. So I didn't want to talk about what's going on with the HoloNet and with Lanterns because I didn't feel it was my place. But the writing has been on the wall for me, for the HoloNet, for this podcast for a little while now, that it was getting to be that we were going to need to find a new home. We were either going to need to strike out independently or find another group to run with. And really, I can't thank the people over at KLRN enough. I can't thank our brothers and sisters over at Mojo 5-0 enough, because there were some talks with Mojo 5-0 as well, and I'd still be open to working together with them also. We'll have to see what takes shape. But throughout all of it, and I've had ups and downs. I've had days when I would wonder if I was just shouting into the darkness, if I was just casting my voice out into the void, when the people that are listening to this show right now, somebody will pop up and make a comment and say, keep going, don't give up. I don't know, I try to play things pretty close to my vest, but it's kind of hard to hide from somebody when there's 100 hours of your audio that are out there. It's kind of hard to hide how you feel, what your emotions are like. And this has been an extraordinarily challenging year for me in my personal life. I'm very, very blessed. Blessed with 4 children and an incredibly understanding wife. A beautiful woman in and out. And I'm blessed to have good work and to be able to do good work that supports our family and allows me to support my wife in a stay-at-home role, because that's the way we traditionally feel that children should be raised. We want to raise our children ourselves. We don't want to pay some 17-year-old hack to raise our children in a daycare center. And if, hey, that's what you got to do, that's what you got to do, man. God love you. I'm not here to judge. I'm just saying that's not what I wanted for my children. And we've been very blessed to be able to pull that off. And I've been very blessed to get the platforms that I've gotten. I was extremely blessed to write for The Blaze for the year or so that I did. I was very, very blessed to be able to write for Lanterns and eventually have a show on Lanterns as well. And to have gained this audience. I mean, there are 500 people that read and listen to this show every week. 500 people. That's not small. It may seem very small when you look at, like, PewDiePie, who I think is battling T-Series for, like, 3 million subscribers or something like that. And it may seem very small in the respect of, Glenn Beck's audience or Rush Limbaugh's audience. But think about it. Think about having 500 people who tune in, who take an hour out of their life to listen to what you have to say once a week. It's an enormous honor. And I am very, very grateful to all of you for it, and for all of you that have helped along the way and have invited me into your car with you, or next to you at the gym, or invited me into your home. And because that's what it is. That's really what it is. That's the gift of what technology has done. Technology has made this medium accessible to everyone. Formerly, it was a precious few, who got to enter our homes and enter our lives this way. A few like Rush Limbaugh, a few like Glenn Beck or others of the greats, you know, like Paul Harvey. Everybody talks about Paul Harvey. Paul Harvey was one of the greatest there ever was. I mean, I always think back to and refer back to his Thank a Farmer and his very prophetic "If I Were the Devil." And now, this technology of podcasting, of YouTube, allows a schlub like me, who wins the Nobel Prize for attempted college, it allows me that same type of platform. It allows me that same chance. And it allows you that same chance if that's something you want to take, if you want to put yourself out there. And there are a lot of great men and women in radio who have grasped that and held on to it. Some have been more successful than others. Some haven't been very successful at all. But I do this because I love it. Because there's a passion to it. And I love having this conversation with you every week. And I'm going to keep doing it as long as I can. And with whoever will come along with me or will give me aid and give me help in this quest to hold the line against the night and to speak truth. Because we are entering into an age. Hell, we're already there, where truth is viewed as hateful by many. Truth is a hate crime. You know, I thought I'd heard of it as a hashtag, you know, hate truth or truth hate. You know, I went searching for it. I couldn't find real convincing evidence that this was a thing. But undeniably, speaking truth has become viewed as a hate crime. And it's not, I'm talking about, you know, my truth, my story, subjective truth. No, I'm talking about objective truth. Truth that was accepted en masse for ages. Truth that a man is a man and a woman is a woman and an Apache attack helicopter is an Apache attack helicopter. I mean, truths that you would not ordinarily question. And I am not standing against questioning truth, because I believe we need to question everything. But there are certain truths that are self-evident. If I may wax poetical and paraphrase the Declaration of Independence, that all men are created equal, and that we are endowed by our Creator with certain inalienable rights, and that among these are life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. Among those inalienable truths have always been that a man is a man and a woman is a woman. Now, that's not to say that one is superior to the other. I've constantly argued for the absolute superiority of women, and in every way, shape, or form. And women should be put up on a pedestal and treated with respect by all men. I believe in raising my sons as gentlemen, but you know, there are some situations that call for men. Men are called upon to be the providers, the protectors, the defenders. You know, sometimes women can fill that role as well, but historically speaking and evolutionarily speaking, men are better suited to that role. We're designed for it. We're built for it because that was the vision that God had in mind for us. The providers, the protectors, the defenders. These truths can get you deplatformed, can get you fired, can strip away your livelihood in an instant. I submit for the approval of the Midnight Society, a little throwback to my Nickelodeon watching days, Count Dankula. The man is now unemployable. Like him or not, I mean, I'm a fan of most of his work. Some of his just absolutely rampant and virulent posting goes a little bit too far in my book. But that's the purpose of comedians, to show us where the line is. Comedians are the people who are supposed to go too far. And you know, if just one Scottish lord is going to define the line of what is decent and indecent, I think we've got bigger problems. Sargon of Akkad is another good example. Gavin McInnes has been wiped off the face of the internet for all intent and purpose. Now it seems he's at least found maybe a temporary home with Steven Crowder with Louder with Crowder, and I hope he stays on his third chair. That'd be fantastic. But I'll give you a couple of concrete examples here. Let me go picture in picture. On the Blaze, Facebook takes action against users for calling accused cop killer illegal immigrant and illegal alien. This is an old story. This is from December 30th. But it remains very true. Going back to Blue Lives Matter, we're talking about the death of California police officer Ronil Singh. Here's a name that fell out of the newspaper, huh? And a lot of people were making posts describing Gustavo Perez Arriaga, the man police accused of murdering the California police officer, as an illegal immigrant. And posts declaring Arriaga to be an illegal immigrant or an illegal alien were ruled by Facebook to violate their standards against hate speech. And here's the offending post. Vetted legal immigrant, protector, talking about Officer Singh, an unvetted illegal immigrant, murderer. Any questions? So pointing out that someone is an illegal immigrant or an illegal alien, which is a true statement. Illegal immigrant and illegal alien are legal terms that are used to describe persons who are in this country illegally. Using that true speech is now hate speech. True speech is now hate speech. Hate truth. Truth hate. George Orwell got it pretty right about 1984. He got some of the details wrong, though. I think 1984 isn't because the year is 1984. I think it's because the people that were enacting it were born in 1984. Wrap your mind around that one. The people enacting the dystopian terror of 1984 were actually born that year. The problem is us, millennials. Now, in more recent news, story breaking all over the country, fake news, hashtag fake news. Jussie Smollett breaks his silence as damning new evidence suggests he actually orchestrated the hate crime attack against him in Chicago. Lawyers for Jussie Smollett released a statement late Saturday explaining the star actor is, quote, angered and devastated by new reports that allege Smollett colluded with two Nigerian brothers to orchestrate a homophobic and racist attack against him. And they're doubling and tripling down here. They said in a statement, as a victim of a hate crime who has cooperated with police investigation, Jussie Smollett is angered and devastated by recent reports that the perpetrators are individuals he is familiar with. He has now been further victimized by claims attributing these alleged perpetrators that Jussie played a role in his own attack. Nothing is further from the truth, and anyone claiming otherwise is lying. One of those purported suspects was Jussie's personal trainer, who he hired to ready him physically for a music video. It is impossible to believe that this person could have played a role in the crime against Jussie or would falsely claim Jussie's complicity. Jussie and his attorney anticipate being further updated by the Chicago Police Department on the status of the investigation and will continue to cooperate. At the present time, Jussie and his attorneys have no inclination to respond to unnamed sources inside the investigation, but will continue discussions through official channels. So, the details of this, after weeks of intensive investigative work, the case took a turn last Wednesday when Chicago police apprehended two Nigerian brothers, both of whom worked for extras in the same TV show that Smollett stars in. These brothers, Olabinju Osundairo, 27, and Abimbola Osundairo, 25, were released Friday when new evidence surfaced, shifting the trajectory of the investigation. Reports now indicate that the brothers, who are fully cooperating with detectives, admitted Smollett hired them to orchestrate the attack. The admission reportedly came after investigators confronted them with evidence proving that they bought a rope found around Smollett's neck after the attack. According to WBBM-TV, not only did the Osundairo brothers purchase the rope at Smollett's request, but Smollett also paid for it. The brothers were allegedly paid $3,500 each for the hoax attack before leaving for Nigeria on the afternoon of January 29th, the same day Smollett says he was attacked. The brothers were reportedly promised another $500 each upon their return. Sources said one of the brothers held the rope and poured the bleach while the other wore a plain red hat and yelled slurs at Smollett. The sources say the red hat was bought at an uptown beauty supply store and that the attack was supposed to happen before January 29th. The brothers told detectives the three men rehearsed the attack days before it happened. So that's pretty cut, clean, and dry, and yet Jussie Smollett is now doubling and tripling down through his lawyer. I just want to point out, I had never even heard of this guy before last week. I don't watch Empire. I don't know anything about the show. Never heard of this guy. Don't care. We'll probably forget his name in a week. But we're becoming a society now where your amount of power, your amount of pull is dictated by your level of victimization. Where people are willing to be quote-unquote victimized in order to further their career or further their fame, where it's a boon to be victimized. This is the oppression culture that we have built out, where it is now advantageous for someone to appear the victim. The greater you are on the victim tree, on the hierarchy of your oppression, the better off you are. The more socially viable you are. You're socially superior. And I, as a cisgendered, heterosexual white male, am the absolute bottom rung of the ladder. Made even worse so by the fact that I'm a conservative and I'm Christian. So I am the absolute lowest possible rung. And I suppose at the top you would have, a trans person of color who is gender fluid and omnisexual. That would be the person. And a Muslim. For maximum effect of all the different varieties, of all the intersectionalities thrown into one. And that apparently is now our source of social power, is how oppressed we can make others perceive that we are. And here is one of the first prominent examples, one of the first pretty much cut, cleaned, and dry examples of someone creating the appearance of their own victimhood in order to advance their personal status. Because as I said, never heard of the show Empire, don't care. Never heard of Jussie Smollett, don't care. But this week now I've heard of him and I know the name. So how many people are like me? This guy's a household name now, at least for this 15 minutes of fame. And until this long trial process gets drawn out. By the way, according to a report that I saw on Drudge, he could be looking at 3 years. Can you imagine if this case goes to a trial? How stretched out this could be? This guy's name could be a household name for 5 years, for half a decade as a trial stretches out. And legal controversy grows and looms. It's like natural born killers, except we're not talking about serial killers. We're talking about victimhood. People arranging their own victimhood now. How about that? And the hashtag that apparently Twitter does not want to trend. Hashtag fake news. Oh yeah, that's good times. All right, folks, we'll take a quick break. When we come back, the leader of Austria, the Chancellor of Austria, Sebastian Kurz, we've talked about Herr Kurz before, praising President Trump ahead of an anticipated visit to Washington, D.C. All that and more when we come back from this quick break. You're listening to the HoloNet Podcast on the Lanterns Media Network and KLRN Radio.
You are listening to KLRN Radio, where liberty and reason still reign.
You're listening to the Lanterns Radio Network. We are the network dedicated to empowering the individual, illuminating the truth, defending American exceptionalism, and inspiring future generations. Stay connected and get involved at lanterns.buzz for great radio. Get commentary and news of the day. Lanterns.buzz.
You're listening to the HoloNet podcast on the Lanterns Media Network. The new conservative resistance begins right here, right now.
Allied reinforcements have arrived from the west.
You're listening to the HoloNet on Lanterns Media Network. The millennial conservative resistance begins here.
Yes, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, children of all ages, the new millennial conservative resistance does begin right here, right now with you. You're listening to the HoloNet podcast. Thank you. You can follow us online, facebook.com/HoloNet, theholonet.com, and also on KLRN, find us, the HoloNet. Wanted to break into just a real quick aside. I know I teased the story about the Austrian Chancellor before the break there, but we really need to dig into this because it's been making news. What is a national emergency, legally speaking. For that, we're going to go to law.cornell.edu. Title 50, U.S. Code Chapter 34, National Emergencies. We'll skip ahead here. Declaration of national emergency by the President. The effect on laws and superseding legislation. Now, with respect to acts of Congress authorizing the exercise during the period of national emergency of any special or extraordinary power, the President is authorized to declare such a national emergency. Such proclamation shall immediately be transmitted to Congress and published in the Federal Register. Any provisions of law conferring powers and authorities to be exercised during a national emergency shall be effective and remain in effect, 1, only when the President, in accordance with subsection A, declares a national emergency, and 2, in accordance with this chapter. No law enacted after September 14, 1976 shall supersede this subchapter unless it does so in specific terms. So, the President has to submit a national emergency to Congress and log it in the Federal Register. And no legislation passed before 1974 can supersede it. National emergencies. Okay. Now, here is what Congress can do that was dead air. I'm going to have to fix that. Anyway, so now that we're coming back from the break, sorry to people on video. I kind of got started there. We're talking about national emergencies. We're going to talk about the Austrian Chancellor in a little bit. I teased that before the break. But national emergency is making a lot of news. President Trump's national emergency. And I wanted to touch base on that a little bit, what the legal definitions are. And first and foremost, I read in the earlier section here on Cornell law, national emergency has to be declared to the Congress by the President, logged in the Federal Register, and supersedes all laws written before 1974. So, a national emergency declared by the President can be terminated if there is a law in a joint resolution terminating the emergency. So both houses of Congress have to pass a joint resolution saying, no, there is no such emergency, or the President issues a proclamation terminating it. Any national emergency declared by the President shall be terminated on the date specified in the joint resolution referred to in the clause, or the date specified by the President's proclamation. Any action taken on or proceeding pending not finally concluded or determined to be such date, any action or proceeding committed to the such date, Now, termination review of national emergencies by Congress, not later than 6 months after a national emergency is declared, and not later than the end of each 6-month period thereafter that such emergency continues, each House of Congress shall meet to consider a vote on joint resolution to determine whether that emergency shall be terminated. So the clock is ticking for President Trump. He has 6 months until the Congress is obligated by law to consider a joint resolution to terminate his national emergency declaration. And then it's going to happen every 6 months subsequent to that. So then we have the rules about how it needs to be filed and, precisely how they need to go about declaring it a national emergency, or whether they could do an automatic declaration. Okay, so we go back to Chapter 34 for national emergencies. And we have the exercise of emergency powers and authorities here. So what precisely can the President do under the terms of a national emergency? So when the President declares a national emergency, no powers or authorities made available by statute for use in the event of an emergency shall be exercised unless and until the President specifies the provisions of law under which he proposes that he or other officers will act. So in other words, even under a declaration of national emergency, the President cannot act in a way that contradicts existing law. This is crucial because the law regarding the erection of a border fortification was signed years ago by joint session of Congress, bipartisan bill. And that is the law that the President is going to be able to carry through under the terms of the National Emergency Statute. He can't just come up with new laws that he wants to execute. He has to execute existing laws. Such specification may be made either in the declaration of national emergency or by one or more contemporaneous and subsequent executive orders. So he either has to publish a separate executive order or obey an existing law. So this is not the catastrophic end of American freedom that a lot of people are pointing it out to be. Point blank, we don't like executive orders. As conservatives, as constitutionalists, we generally do not like executive orders, and you shouldn't. It's ruled by executive fiat. But the question we have to address at its core is what's going on at the southern border in the United States what you could consider a national emergency? Now, my point of view on this is, and has been, a resounding yes. There are large swaths of southern Arizona that are effectively lawless, that are de facto controlled by cartels and coyotes. There are places where a law-abiding, God-fearing American cannot and should not go. And that is an unacceptable state of affairs, where the United States is not exercising sovereign control over its own territory. And that is sufficient, in my eyes, to constitute a national emergency. We do not have operational control over our sovereign border. That, in and unto itself, is an emergency. We are not able to exercise sovereign control over our boundaries. And I'm not just talking about the southern border. There are large swaths of the Canadian border that I feel could be better monitored. Because as a lot of people will tell you, a lot of visa overstays occur from Canada. Sorry to my relatives up there. No offense intended. But when you're talking about border security, you have to be comprehensive. The southern border requires a wall. The northern border, I think, requires better checkpoints and better enforcement of visa overstays. But that's the question we have to come to with this national emergency controversy is, what do you choose to believe? Do you choose to believe that tens of thousands of refugees pouring over the southern border, bringing with them crime and drugs and communicable diseases that were heretofore eradicated within the United States, or at least significantly curtailed? Do you believe that represents a clear and present danger to the United States, or do you not? When confronted with the evidence, with the stats, with the eyewitness reports from the people who live there, are you willing to dismiss those reports? Or will you accede to their credibility? Me, I will listen to the people who live in Yuma. I'll listen to the people who live in Ajo, who live in Nogales, and who will be the first to tell you, yes, this is a crisis, it is an emergency, and the federal government must act. And I call on Congress, instead of wasting your time digging your heels in and trying to blow holes in the president's national emergency, do your job and legislate. Write law that addresses these issues. And then the president's national emergency will simply cease, because you will have solved for it. Maybe that's a little bit too much common sense for those Washington types. I don't know. Now, I promised we'd get to it, so get to it we shall. Here we go. In Berlin, Austrian leadership praises Trump's very active and also very successful foreign policy. Austria's chancellor has described parts of U.S. President Donald Trump's foreign policy as very successful as he prepares to visit Washington this week. Chancellor Sebastian Kurz told Sunday's edition of the Austrian newspaper Die Presse that one of the main aims of his visit is to help avert a trade war which he said would endanger thousands of jobs in Austria. On Saturday, German Chancellor Angela Merkel said U.S. authorities appear to have concluded that European cars were a national security threat, suggesting that trade tensions might spike anew. Kurz is expected at the White House on Wednesday. He pointed to differences with Trump on trade and the Iran nuclear deal, but praised the president's support for Israel and efforts to secure peace on the Korean Peninsula. The Austrian leader was quoted as saying that Trump is running, in part, a very active and also very successful foreign policy. He cited as an example long-running U.S. efforts to get its NATO partners to increase defense spending, arguing that only Trump's threats had an effect. We see that rather critically as a neutral country that supports disarmament, but corresponds to the aims NATO has set itself. Kurz said, Austria is not a part of NATO, but is a member of the European Union. Asked whether he thinks Trump wants to weaken the EU, Kurz replied, I don't think it can be in America's interest to have a weak EU. Kurz, a 32-year-old conservative, took office in December 2017 in coalition with Austria's nationalist anti-migration Freedom Party. He has made curbing unregulated migration a priority. So definitely cut from a similar cloth as President Trump. I think his visit this week may bear unexpected fruit. Perhaps we'll find a new ally in the Austrians. Although I have to disagree. I have to tacitly disagree. A weak EU is nothing but good for America. Nothing but good. And with Article 13 now passed and put into place, a weak EU is precisely what we're going to get as tech giants start fleeing en masse. So real quick before we go, I wanted to show you real fast KLRNRadio.com. If you haven't had the chance to check them out, again, that's KLRNRadio.com. Here's the website. It's developing pretty quickly. You can find KLRN Radio also on Facebook and on Twitter if you want to go support a very patriotic group of Americans. They're known for America Off the Rails. And we'll go to the show listing here, tell you a little bit about them. We've got America Off the Rails, the Conservative Curmudgeon, the Jen and Rick Show, the Hardcore Patriot, God's Pure Word of Faith, Remember the Fallen, Conversations in Science, Robinson and Wright, Wentz World, Flo's Focus, Jesse's POV, the Generation Y Conservative, which I'm going to have to check out, Jesse's Coffee Shop, and those are the core shows on KLRN. And then you go to some of the syndicated shows that they have. You have Behind Enemy Lines, Conservative Commandos, Veto and Veto, Patriot Radio, The Loftus Party, Shut Up and Sell, and soon to be added to that list, the HoloNet Podcast. So when you get a chance, check them out. KLRNradio.com /syndicated. You can find the show schedule there. They have a chat room set up and everything, so you can chat with them live. Tweets at KLRN Radio. And once again, want to thank them for their support and syndication through this transition. So turning to other news, Rush Limbaugh and Adam Schiff, between the two of them, we're seeing signs that the Mueller investigation is not going to end the controversy surrounding President Trump. That no matter what Mueller comes out and describes, like the Senate came out and described that there was no evidence of any collusion between President Trump and the Russians, no matter what happens, they're going to keep banging the drums. Schiff has signaled Mueller findings won't be enough. We're going to have to do our own investigation. So Representative Adam Schiff hinted that that he would not accept the findings of Special Counsel Robert Mueller as the investigation into President Trump and President Trump and Russia. CNN's Dana Bash said, we expect at some point, maybe soon, maybe not, the findings of the Mueller investigation to finally be completed. If he finds that there was no direct collusion between the Trump campaign and Russia, will you accept that? Schiff said, we're going to have to do our own investigation, and we are. We'll certainly be very interested to learn what Bob Mueller finds, but we'll have to fight to get that information. Bill Barr has not been willing to commit to provide that report either to Congress or to the American people. We're going to need to see it. The American people need to see it. We also need to see the evidence behind the report. There may be, for example, evidence of collusion or conspiracy that is clear and convincing, but not proof that is beyond a reasonable doubt. So, in other words, there might be things that come close to being proof, but actually aren't proof, and we want to damage the president with that. Come on, Schiff. Really? He added, the American people are entitled to know if there is evidence of a conspiracy between either the president or the president's campaign and a foreign adversary. At the end of the day, the most important thing for the American people to know is whether the president is somehow compromised, whether there's leverage the Russians could use over the president, and if the Russians are in a position to expose wrongdoing by the president or his campaign, that's compromising. Bash pressed on, you're talking about transparency, but I guess the question is, in terms of what the substance of his findings are, Robert Mueller, will you, given the fact that he has had such an extensive investigation, will you accept the findings separate from the investigation that you're doing? Schiff said, I will certainly accept them in this way. I have great confidence in the special counsel, and if the special counsel represents that he has been investigated and not interfered with and not been able to make a criminal case, then I will believe that he is operating in good faith. So, double talk. I mentioned 1984 earlier, and this is good old-fashioned doublespeak, where you can say two different things that are absolutely contradictory and believe both, evidently. We're seeing a lot of this on the left lately. So to recap, today we talked about the evolving situation of where HoloNet is going to be based. We talked about hate truth or truth hate and how we seem to be crossing the barrier into a dystopian future where your strength is based on your level of victimhood. We followed up on the state of emergency, the national emergency that President Trump has declared, and what that looks like and what that enables. But at the end of it all, what it comes down to is, what do you want to believe? Because people are no longer being governed by facts. We are being governed by beliefs. Simply because we have no trusted arbiter of facts. Homer Simpson once said, "Facts are meaningless. They can be used to prove anything." And it's a rather dim view to take of the world, but in 2019, going into 2020, when you can in fact be in the possession of your own facts and completely get away with it, according to the mainstream media, what is one to do? This is where we need what the Bible called discernment, where we can tell the truth from the lies through grace and through context. It's not perfect, never is. But you have to use your mind, use your intelligence, use your intuition, and search your soul for the truth. And discernment is that you'll know it when you see it. So we're going to continue looking for the truth, no matter how much people call it hate. Because the truth doesn't hate anyone. The truth only hates falsehood. You're listening to the HoloNet Podcast. Thank you. God bless you. And God bless America. Good night.